Well, hello, welcome back. So I put a few videos up with regard to the Luxe Wild Wild West stove, and from some of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and just some of the online resources that I've been looking at. There are some people that have, including videos on YouTube here that I put. People have talked about how they have gotten this stove and it has warped on them. Almost to the point where it's not able to be assembled any longer. And of course, if you make a pretty sizable purchase like this, I paid $250. I think the regular price is $300. That's pretty bad if that occurs. Now I haven't had too much experience with this stove. The I did the first burn back in early December, I think it was, and then I went out right around January 10th of this year, 2022, and I was out there for two nights, and it was burning all night long, both nights. Especially the second night, I had it going like great guns. It was full of coals, super red hot, including the stovepipe was literally red hot. If I remember, I'll put a picture in this video here. But to me, it worked great, and so I want to talk about this as a review of the stove. Now, again, granted, I've only really used it once. Now it was 2 nights, but I haven't taken it out a second time yet. To really get a good handle on it and give it a more in-depth review. But from bringing it out in literally sub 10-degree temperatures. It worked really well, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more about how this stove actually functioned, and what my thoughts are, and what I recommend it, some of the pros, some of the cons that I have on it, and so with that, I'll get into it. Now, first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reposition the camera and reassemble this thing. Now, I disassembled it when I was out in the land, or out the land when I was coming home. And I wanted to, put it back together. I haven't put it back together since. It's been sitting in the box or in the bag, and so I want to put it back together, see if it's warped. If it was going to warp, it would have on the second night because it was insanely hot. I was burning ironwood, which is an exceedingly Blue Beech. It's a type of ironwood. It was exceedingly hot. I don't normally get my stoves that hot, but it was very cold, and I, just kept burning it throughout the whole night. So to me, if it was going to warp, the temperatures that I had in it on that night were hot enough to make it warp. So again, I haven't assembled it since. This is going to be the first time, and let's see how it goes. So let me reposition the camera. I'll point it towards the floor, and we'll take a look. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to get all this in the shot. So, all right. Now, obviously, in here, I'm not going to take out the stovepipe. It's just a steel, just a piece of sheet steel, so it's not really that big of a deal. Here's the 4 legs and the stovepipe. So let's go take a look. Now, I did keep the sleeve. I don't know if this has anything to do with it retaining shape. Now, again, it might not have retained its shape. So we're going to find out. But I did keep the sleeve. Obviously, it will also fall apart eventually, especially when you bring it out in the snow. It's going to get wet. And, when it gets wet, obviously, it's going to get really kind of crappy. So, well, here she is. Let's see. So this is the top. It is warped, for sure. You can see it bending. But it doesn't look like too badly. Oh, man, I really got to clean this thing. This is the stovepipe connection that goes from the stove to the stovepipe. Here's the rack that I have for the bottom. Here's the front. You can see there's still tons of ash on here. Here's the back. Yeah, that's also warped. I don't know if you can really see that, but you can see it flexing here. Here's one of the sides. Current leaf. Here's one of the sides. And that actually, okay, so that did warp, but not in the way that it like really flexes that much that way. It's like bulged out a little bit on the sides, or on the side. This one did warp a little bit, but not much. And then here's the bottom, which is probably the worst of all of them. But I'm thinking with the bolts, I should be able to get that back into shape pretty easily. So let's get this thing back together. I wonder if this will actually work. I haven't really, messed with or played around with the most efficient ways of getting this thing together. So let's see what we can come up with here, since I'm here. Try and speed through this, or fast forward through it. Maybe this will actually help. Who knows? I've never seen a, hey, this is the best way or the most efficient way of putting this thing together, so I don't know. Maybe I've stumbled upon something. There we go. That is exceedingly crappy, Joe. That side. That side. Now again, they didn't warp to the point where I can't get these into the little channels that they have on the bottom of it. This doesn't seem like it just yet. Yeah. Dumb idea. Okay, well, we've proven that. Don't do that. That doesn't work. Okay, so that's in there. And you can see, once I get it locked into those channels, yeah, it is pretty warped. But let's see how she does. We got that. Lock that in there, and that in there. And that goes in there pretty well. And that's the bottom, so this has to go this way. Get that started in there, and that started in there. That slides a little tighter. Okay, now this is where I can see it getting kind of hard. Let's see. I'm gonna have to kind of like bend it to try and get it in there. Now, I have no experience with other titanium stoves. I do not know if this is something that occurs on all of them, like if this is expected, or if this is just because of cheap quality titanium or what. But wow, that's really pushing out. All right. Well, if that's the case, let's see what we can do by opening this up and pushing out while we try and get this together. By the way, I apologize for the way I sound. I had to have a tooth yanked, and I'm in the middle of getting an implant, so I am right now actually missing one of my front teeth. It sucks. Wow. Yeah, geez. People weren't kidding. Maybe if I do it upside down, that'll help, because the top was definitely less warped than the bottom. So I'm thinking maybe if I can get it locked into the top. Now, if both are warped, I don't know. Okay, that's in there. And that's in there. Okay, so I got them. Geez, yeah, they're all wanting to warp the bottom now, or warp the top now. Like the whole thing wants to move with the sides. So the bottom and the top really don't they don't dictate how this moves. The sides, when they're together, they all come together to warp the top and to warp the bottom, or to make them a little less straight. They go quite a weird angle. Okay, got that. So it almost seems like it's just more this side. Hopefully you can still see it. This side here is really pushing it square. Now, I haven't attempted, as you can see, to try and bend this at all or anything like that. Okay, so that is now together fully. Okay, that wasn't terrible. Again, this is really just more experimentation on my side. So, again, I don't know if you've seen my other video or if I even mentioned it in there, but if you hold it between your legs, that definitely does make it a lot easier to get this thing. Oh shit! Shoot! To get this thing together. I apologize. There we go. Now, obviously, my legs are not the same width apart, top and bottom, so I want to get the back, the bottom part here, where there's less pressure that I'm putting on it with my legs, together as quickly as I can. But I can definitely understand people's gripes about this. This is a pain. And when it's cold and you don't have the dexterity you normally would with your fingers. I mean, it's cold in this room. This room is not part of it's not hooked into the regular HVAC in my house. So I don't have the, crap. I don't have the same, or I don't have any heat in this room. Yeah, it popped right out when I was putting it together. So let's see if I can still do it. I might loosen this one a little bit. Yeah, wow, I can really understand why. Again, I don't know if that's a symptom of all titanium, or is this cheap titanium or what. That would suck, but it is together here, so that's, yep. Okay, got that back together. Maybe once you get it back into shape, maybe you can burn it again to get it to hold. But geez. So I have my foot against it on my side right now to stabilize it. Get this wing nut tightened up. I mean, yeah, in terms of design, this could definitely be better. I could see, one of those fold-up ones rather than a takedown stove like this where it's all separate pieces. One that folds up or folds into itself would be quite an advantage. Oh, there it is. And I guess there's a reason why some of those other stoves like Winterwell and all that are more expensive. Maybe they're thicker, less prone to warping. I don't know. Okay, so, all right, I got it together, and, it definitely will work. So, there we go. Tighten this one back up. All right, there we go. All right. I mean, that wasn't too bad. Could definitely have been worse. Could definitely be better. I'm not going to deny it. So, I got that back together, and of course, this thing, with the screw, goes back in there. So, all right, let me readjust the camera, bring it back up, so you see that it does go back together. It is fully together. Each side is, in the proper channel. So, that is excellent. All right. Okay, so thoughts. Well, again, as you can see, I did get it back together. It didn't take long, even though it was pretty warped. I won't deny it. I didn't think it was that bad when I took it apart because it seemed to be okay, and it wasn't hot, so it was pretty much in its final position when I took it apart. But I was also, kind of scrambling to get everything taken apart and packed up so I can get home. That being said, pros. It's really small. It's light. It's got the glass. I love the glass. That was awesome to be able to look at that. It casts just enough light at night to, be able to see, what you were doing, kind of. But the ambiance that it gave off was excellent. I would not complain if there was a glass panel on the side as well, but that's, not necessary. Purely a want, not a need. It size-wise, to me, was perfect for the OneTigris Smokey Hut, which is what I was using. In my mind, that's a one-man tent. People say that, or they say that it's a two-man. In the summer, yeah, I could see fitting two people in there. Stove with a stove, no way. You're just too close to it, or you would just be too close to it, or you'd be like right up on top of it. Potential fire hazard, burn hazard. I can't recommend that. I do have a Nyko Packer stove, which doesn't fold down, stainless steel, and it's bigger. I'd say it's probably like 30 or 40% bigger than this one in terms of the firebox. That one probably is too big for that tent, honestly. This one, the size, it's great. It heated up the tent very quickly, and even in those really cold temperatures, I mean, obviously it gets colder, and it's still a really good size. Again, it's light. It packs down. The handle on the door when you want to feed it. This thing never got hot to the touch. This right here. I was able to open it just fine every time. This did get hot, but this is kind of one of those things you just kind of tap and move it over, and you won't burn yourself. You're perfectly fine. The damper and the spark arrestor, they worked. I'm not the biggest fan of this design, this extra piece, because it compresses. And while I guess it's not terrible because it's not all the way through and it's not going to, make it collapse or anything like that. That was something that, I don't know, I feel like it could be either improved, or maybe I'll find something, find another way to connect a stovepipe to the stove. I feel it's really flimsy. It's really thin metal. The stove, the damper, and the spark arrestor obviously I never take out, but the damper would get really hot unless you had it pulled out almost all the way. And even then, I would make sure I didn't touch it. So it worked well. I like it for the price. I think it's great. I would recommend it. I think the warping of the panel or the panels is not enough to make me say, no, this thing is worthless and I'll never be able to get it back together again or whatever. You just saw me do it. It took like what? I don't even know how long this video has been going. Maybe like 10 minutes. And that was the first time working with warped panels. Now I have the experience. Hopefully it'll take a little bit less time to do that. But yeah, so some of the cons about it, the connection, this, again, I really don't like this. I think this is chintzy, and I think that it really could be improved upon. That being said, it did work. My stovepipe never came out. The damper did pop out once or twice when I was throwing wood in, but I don't fault that. That was me just like being cavalier with how I was just throwing the wood in there. So while I don't like it and I feel it's cheap, I think it worked perfectly fine. The stovepipe didn't, it wasn't like, moving around like crazy. It worked very well. And one thing I really like, but this is with any titanium stove, because it transfers heat so well, when you're done, this thing cools down like that. I mean, so when you're ready to go, you don't have to wait for this thing to die down or whatever. You can actually, with gloves on, pick it up by the legs and just dump it out, and then like 3 seconds later, it's freezing cold, or it's the same temperature as the ambient air. So I do like that. The main con that I had with it was, no matter what, even if you have the damper pulled all the way out, when you open the door, smoke billows out from the firebox. So you have to be super prepared with your firewood to open the door, throw it in, and close it, because if you don't, you will get smoke billowing in. And if you light it and it doesn't fully ignite, right? Let's say it's just smoldering. Your tinder is just smoldering, say a paper or something, whatever, is just smoldering, and you open that up, that smoke is going to come out. So when you, like, if you don't get it lit the first time and you got to try and light it again, I was using the wood that I have is slightly damp. If you have to do that, that smoke is going to come back in and smoke out the tent. So when you light this, keep the door open, or make sure you're using a really reliable fire starter so that you light it once and you don't have to open it again until everything's ignited and you are just feeding it at that point, not trying to get it lit. Yeah, that smoke was pretty bad. There were a couple of times I actually did have to open up the door because the smoke was billowing out so much. Yeah, I mean, really, that's about it in terms of the cons. I wasn't sure about the warping. Again, I had heard about it, but I don't know. It wasn't terrible, as you just saw. I can live with that. Some people have different standards. You know, when you pay a few $100s or more, you expect a certain level of standardization, I suppose. So it doesn't deviate from its flatness. So I get that. Me, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's the only one I have, and I don't have any other titaniums, nor am I willing to spend more money now on a more expensive one. But that being said, yeah, I could totally see that as being a deal breaker for people. So if that's something that you think you don't want to have to deal with, then stay away from this stove. If it's something you think you can live with and you're okay with paying less, I mean, $250 compared to like a winter well at $400, I think at the minimum, or $380 or something like that. This thing is, to me, worth it. The stovepipe was good. It's wide enough. The steel one that they gave, that is definitely wide enough. So when you roll it over, you don't have any issues with smoke like seeping out from the seams. At least I didn't. When I had this thing blazing hot, it did get the stovepipe did get literally red hot about, I don't know, maybe like 20 inches from the top of the stove itself, 20 inches up, and it was glowing red. I never got the firebox itself glowing red, so I don't know if that's just the nature of titanium, because the chimney pipe is steel. But yeah, I mean, I never felt in any danger with it. It worked very well. It kept my tent very nice and warm. And again, I would say this is limited to a smaller tent. I wouldn't go really any bigger than Smokey Hut. I have the Luxe Megahorn 4-person. I wouldn't use this stove in there. I don't think it's big enough. You would constantly be feeding it. And same for the OneTigris Tegemin that I have. I haven't used that yet, but that's a much bigger stove. That's 6 and change by 10 and change. That's pretty big. I don't think this is big enough. My Nyko Packer, I think, with its increased size, I think that one's going to be a lot better for that. With regard to cooking, this thing was excellent. The only thing is there's no like, this is really hot over here and not as hot over there. It's hot all over the place on the thing. So if you're going to boil water, you can boil it right above the door. You can boil it right next to the stovepipe. It's going to be pretty much the same. But it did work very well. Water boiled very quickly. I was able to cook on it with no problem. And it's a pretty decent surface area on the top. So I mean, you got what, like 10 inches by whatever the width is, which I think is like 8, maybe a little bit more than 8. So you do have a pretty decent work surface here for cooking. Yeah, I gotta say, for me, again, and my uses, I recommend this thing. It's your decision. Really, the warping is probably the biggest thing that is the con. For, I would say, most people, the biggest thing I would say watch out for is the smoke. So when you aren't able to get it lit the first time and you got to reignite it, open the door and then light it again, or open it up and then light it again, because you will get smoke coming in, and it can fill up, especially a TP tent, it can fill that up very, very quickly. So you got to be very careful. Other than that, I'm very happy with it. And yeah, I'm glad I got it. So thank you very much for stopping by. I appreciate it. If you do have any questions, leave them below in the comments. I would appreciate a subscribe if you can. Hopefully, any chance I get, I try and make these videos. And I look forward to seeing you the next time. Hopefully, I'll have a new tooth by then. Thanks. Take care.